Thank you so much for joining us today. It's an absolute pleasure to be connecting with you, Erin.
Likewise.
I love sharing with you, and it's been so excited to do it in this current time because it's been a couple of years since we last shared on a video.
Yeah.
And what an exciting time that we are within because these are the times that we've spoken about for years and we're living them. And so we're living our astrology and we're creating with it. And it's just like an opportune time, I feel like, to bring into manifestation a lot of the things we've been dreaming of and hankering after. How do you feel about that?
I feel like that's exactly accurate, and that's exactly what's going on. Yeah, I mean, going back to even like 2017, I just remember watching what 2020 was going to be like and going, "Oh my God." But then recognizing Pluto changing signs, Uranus changing signs, Neptune changing signs, like all of them changing signs, and it's really coming to fruition right now, and we see it. Like we're witnessing it and we're in it. So yeah, that was very well said.
Yeah, and to be in it, it's not always what you might think it might have looked like. I think that there's been a few, like every good TV show or drama, like been a few abrupt twists and turns to what we might thought the scenarios may be. But in that way, I always feel that the transits, the astrology transits, they conduct an energy which leads us, spurs us on, and stretches us so that we're more equipped to deal with the next moment as it comes.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. Even with the unpredictable, strange little things that the universe throws at us, it's astrology. I almost sometimes feel like I feel like I wouldn't even be able to be alive if I didn't understand astrology. So, yeah.
Very, very grateful.
Yeah.
So this year, like there's such an energy concentration on Pisces, I feel, with because Saturn is completing its transit through Pisces, as is Neptune. Although it's actually into next year, where the grand finale is as we move into February. This is all building to what might be, for in my eyes, need to be altered so we can move forward.
Yeah.
And so, in a sense, the best thing about this energy is that we're going from the last sign, in my eyes, to the first sign. So we're going through this energy of immense wisdom and experience to naivety and newness. And
Oh, yeah.
jolly, it's jolly exciting.
I didn't really think about it that way, but I mean, yeah, absolutely. Pisces being the last sign, and then heading into, and there's so many interesting things, especially because it's Saturn and Neptune conjunct, which that hasn't happened since it was in Capricorn, right? Like 30 years ago or something. So,
Yes,
yeah.
that was just a few years after I was born, and so I have Neptune in Capricorn. Saturn was in Sagittarius, so it was just coming along for that conjunction before I was born. So having lived a full Saturn Neptune cycle, well, for me, it's about bursting the bubble of illusions in many ways. Because we can get caught up into the infrastructures of society, believe that some things are trustworthy or accountable, whether it's a leader or whether it's a system. But through the process, I really feel that the greatest honor is reclaiming the ability how to do it ourselves, whatever these energies are that might have been displaced or dispelled from our consciousness. Example, we might think, oh, the TV's a brilliant thing. Oh, I watch a lot of it and I'll stick my kid in front of that while I'm doing the washing up. But actually, we've learned through time, potentially, that it's good to be discerning with what we watch and certainly not a good babysitter as the TV.
Yep. 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 That's a very good analogy. That's a good one to point to for sure. But yeah, I definitely feel like, and I think you're going to get into this. For me, it's just been a trip to watch this as I'm a very late degrees Pisces sun, 28 degrees, 24 minutes. And so all this stuff is approaching my inner being, and I was looking at your chart too. Like you kind of went through this with Jupiter and Mars. Neptune went over those guys. And I imagine that must have been a trip as well. But
Yeah, I feel well, I was a little bit intimidated about that coming along, the Neptune on the Mars. For me, I feel like it cleansed a lot of doubts.
Mhm.
Um, because I was carrying so many. I think we always do have some to work with, but it was a bit like a wash. Like wasn't relevant for me to carry on with that charade with myself.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Like Poseidon came along and washed all that away, huh?
Yeah, it was the kind of the time that we would have met around that kind of time, there or thereabouts. And so it was just to come, it was necessary. If I'm going to move forward, then what was relevant for me maybe 10 or 20 years ago, carrying on with that, isn't necessarily what I would like to move forward with. If you could just say that one can pick your feet up a little bit more, if you
Yeah,
keep your head up high, you know.
perfectly well said. Yeah, it's a trip too, because yeah, you've got Neptune conjunct your sun. I've got Neptune just about a degree and a half above my ascendant. And so we're both also just very Neptunian people.
Yes. So how would you describe that? I was describing this to a client yesterday, and so I'd like to hear your reception on this before I share what I was sharing.
Well, I will say this, that Neptune I think is absolutely lovely and diffusive. And I do absolutely appreciate and enjoy the super like spiritual side of everything. Even when I was young, like, didn't ever understand anything about spirituality. I mean, I was actually raised in a Catholic home, like, and I went to Bible school and that sort of thing. And so I do feel like that might have been part of it. But going into high school, most of my friends were just more conservatively dressed than I was. And I was always just a little bit of the hippie floating around. Started smoking pot at a pretty young age, that sort of thing. And Neptune does rule addictions. And I definitely, had to learn a lot about that sort of thing, altered states of consciousness. But I also, it's like there's so much beauty to it, but there's also the fogginess that definitely comes with it as well. Like I've always had, I'm just going to public school, like going to a public high school and being taught, just kind of weird stuff. It was so hard to concentrate. I was like, this is not interesting to me at all. And so it was
I
very,
would get admonished very much for daydreaming at school. And I often would say to anybody with this situation, you're probably doing your best work when you're in a daydream because that's where you're finding substance.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And that's, once I actually found my path, before I was an astrologer, I worked on a cannabis farm. Like I managed an actual large cannabis farm. And of course, cannabis has been a big part of my life. I still grow it. Um, but I loved that as well. I loved being involved in that sort of an atmosphere. And then really diving into astrology because you kind of can. I mean, it's very mechanical, and I love the mechanics of astrology. I love studying the mathematics behind the zodiac. I love all that stuff. But it's also when I'm actually, say somebody schedules a reading before I actually give the reading, I get to kind of go into that dreamland and kind of feel into it. So yeah, I love Neptune, and we'll talk more about this, the transiting Neptune, but I want to hear your experience of Neptune.
Well, in some stances, very similar, like using certain substances and exploring the cosmic world. Some of those substances which are more favorable, I would say, than others, because like alcohol was something which I was using regularly at one point in my journey, and I haven't done that for almost 7 years now. I lose track whether it's 7 or 6 or 8, but either way, it's 2018, so it doesn't take much to count. Either way, it's like an energy of escapism, which I and you in that area, I feel like, and poison. And so, but you can turn that around by spiritual seeking in a sense. Like I feel like that you with any astrological energy, you can replace it with another. So if you're doing escaping with alcohol, and then you're like, okay, now I'm devoting myself to this spiritual quest or whatever endeavor, then you've replaced that energy and it's working well. But obviously, I was already quite interested in spirituality in that way. But like when you alcohol is something that takes a while to get out of the ocean with if you've been drinking for habitually. Um, but I think that you could just have compassion for any of these things, right? Because that's the only way out. Neptune allows you to witness yourself, because you get out of body. But the important thing is with this nodal axis, because we have the nodes in this polarity of Pisces and Virgo, and that is that you can get more out of the spiritual experience the more that you get into the body. In my understanding, because it's like the body plugs the spirit into the cosmos, you know. And
Yeah.
so my experience of it is that it was I didn't meet my dad, and so like my lineage was a bit of a mystery, but then
Hmm.
it became my story. The more that you reclaim it, right? For me, also, it affected things like health a little bit, because of the alcohol and stuff like that. But really being able to explore my intrigue with the cosmos. Like I love cosmology and I love astrology, so it's really that ability to be able to be a seer, and then to diffuse sometimes what you see, because I've got it in Capricorn, and then bring it back down to Earth.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, I've tripped out on that a few times, like to be a Capricorn with Sun conjunct Neptune. It's actually it could be a really good blend to have that, at least that Capricorn strength to kind of keep you somewhat grounded. Which I don't have any Earth in my chart. I mean, except for Chiron in Taurus, but yeah, I'm pretty much all water and fire, a little bit of air in there. But yeah, no, I think that was actually really, really well said. And another thing is like in the Encyclopedia of Medical Astrology by Howard Cornell, he talks about like if you just look up Neptune, the way that it's described is, I mean, it's all psychic capabilities, but also delusions and illusions and dreams and so on and so forth. But it's also basically described as like we all have these boundaries. Everybody's got boundaries of different sorts, and some are stronger than others. Pisces being the one with the least amount of boundaries, but it's because Neptune is said to put holes in the boundaries that, like, so we're not constantly always picking up each other's psychic energies. We're not constantly, feeling every little thing that everybody else is going through. But some people have stronger boundaries for that. But Pisces has the weakest ones because Neptune, being Pisces ruler, one of Pisces rulers, puts holes in those boundaries. And one of the technical terms for it is called psychic porousness. And it's like that's part of the fogginess. And I kind of feel like if you're using alcohol or whatever it is, I'm just like you said, I mean, there's certain things I've tried drugs before that I would never, ever, ever do again. That was in my youthful years. But there's certain things, say like psychedelic psilocybin, that sort of thing opens us up to all kinds of realms and just fascinating things. But as long as we're not indulging in too much of really any of those things that alter our consciousness, I do feel like a heavy Neptune transit or just somebody who's got a strong Neptune in their chart, as long as they're not getting wrapped up in those just drugs, then there's an incredible intuition, an incredible ability to psychically tap into other people or situations, anything like that. Would you agree?
Oh, totally. Yes, for sure. Sometimes you can lose yourself, for instance, in the endeavor, because it's what it is. It's enticing and glamorous. So it draws you in, like when you're looking at the ocean, or you're looking at the TV or a movie screen, or someone beautiful that they presented in a glamorous magazine or a billboard. Um, we'd all look beautiful when we put on billboards, I think we look beautiful anyway, but on billboards, we make a stone wall look beautiful.
Yeah.
So, so the point is that it's got a certain varnish and allure to it, if you will, because it's to glamour is a magical term. And so it's spellbound. It takes you out of what you were doing and into what is presented before you.
Yeah.
And
Spelled
so,
great.
which is really cool. But like, so the same thing is that we can get caught up in certain things that are for us or not for us with the Neptune. But at the same time, also a memory can be something that's of relevance. And then when we revisit maybe the place where that memory took place, where it happened, um, maybe it was a house, and they go back there and the house is knocked down, or someone else lives there and they've redesigned it. And so the relevance feels completely different to what was previous. Another example would be like stone steps. If you was like, when I was growing up, I used to sit on those stone steps every summer and have an ice cream. But now the ocean's come along and washed up against them, and it's a slope. They use that to push boats out to ocean.
Great. Wow, that's a great analogy. Wow.
But
Yeah.
one more analogy is the obviously the technology that goes out of date so quickly. But then it becomes back in fashion, like the old game consoles from the 90s were redundant a decade ago
Mhm.
because they're 2 decades old. But now, everyone wants them back.
Yeah, totally. It's so true. It's so funny to watch that happen. That's really another good analogy. Absolutely. So yeah, did you want to go into like how this is like coming in on my chart and like my experience? Because I do have some pretty interesting stories.
So you've just had the North Node transit over your sun these past couple of weeks, and you've had Neptune for the past year or so moving back and forth over your sun, right?
Well, yes, Neptune already went over my sun and then retrograded back, and then it's about to move over it again. And the North Node will go exactly conjunct my sun on the 28th. So it's not quite, it's just off by minutes right now, arc minutes. So yeah, they're both, it's like they're, if, here's my sun, Neptune's here, the North Node's here. They're both right there.
So that you've got your sun at the midpoint of them.
Yes, exactly.
That's
Exactly.
a very powerful thing because even like by a transit, if you have a midpoint of two planets, and then that happens with our personal placement, it conducts such an energy that we're manifesting with the influence of those two planets either side to the planets in the middle.
Exactly, exactly. And meanwhile, this stuff is all trining my moon as well, because my moon is 26 Cancer. So, and my moon's in the eighth house, but
So
so
you've been like because we had the Mars retrograde in Cancer, the last full moon was right by your moon, and so it's a very poignant time.
yes, totally. Oh my gosh, the full moon in Cancer conjunct Mars that's a whole nother story. I was like, how do I get through this? It was really, really intense. More based on a situation that was occurring, which was so interesting because I have a very senior dog. My dog just turned 20 years old this month, and Mars rules dogs. And right at that, and also Mars rules cars. And at that moment, right, literally, like as the moon was transiting over Mars retrograde, I'm driving my car, and all of a sudden, my dog's like basically having a seizure while I'm driving, and he's like falling. It was like, oh God, this is intense. Very spiritual and intense experience. But anywho, going back to just that Neptune, this is just one thing that I've found the most intriguing about it. Something that it's honestly like anybody who's listening, it might just kind of, you can't really understand it unless it's really happened to you. It's this thing that keeps happening every single morning when I wake up for like the past week and a half. I wake up and my dreams, I'm generally throughout my life, it's pretty rare that I actually remember my dreams. But for some reason, I shouldn't say for some reason, for obvious reasons lately, I've been waking up and it's like wherever I was in my dream, it's literally like it's completely real. It's not, it's almost the best way I can think of to describe it is that if you were to be where you are right now, close your eyes for a second, reopen them, and all of a sudden you're back in Tulum standing at the beach. Like that, my dreams are so real that when I come out of it, it's almost hard to believe that like this is actually the physical reality. It's a trip.
It's weird, isn't it? It's almost we have to spiritualize the physical because the mystique of our dreams, we just want to bring. Sometimes you just want to reside there for a minute.
Yeah, really. That's not something I was expecting to happen. I will say I've been more tired lately. That Neptune influence can make me a little more sleepy. There's definitely been, like, I live in California where cannabis is completely legal and there's dispensaries that sell, all kinds of stuff. Not only that, but I make my own edibles and that sort of thing. If I wasn't I have to work. I have to have an income. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to live where I live and that sort of thing. So I have to maintain a level of professionalism. But at the same time, the yearning to, take heavy doses, like, take 100 milligrams of THC and just go into La La Land is so, it's like it's a yearning for it that I've actually never had that kind of a yearning for it. But that's been my experience with it. Definitely super intuitive, like picking up weird things. There's no way anybody can get away with lying to me right now. But yeah, so that's been my experience with it so far.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So maybe it's going to continue to do its work because it's going to be going back. It's going to go into Aries.
I know.
It's
I
going to
know.
poke its nose in, and then Saturn's going to follow. It's not, I don't sure how much the time in between that is, but it's only a matter of weeks, right?
Neptune, I believe Neptune enters Pisces, Aries in March, and then Saturn enters Aries in May.
So there will be 28 years for Saturn and 140 odd years for Neptune.
Neptune, right, right. And yeah,
So that's a really big thing, like for us just to consider. But like at the same time, there's so many other things going along which we don't need to get caught up in. It's just to recognize like the poignancy again of the times for each one of us.
yeah, totally. I mean, for everybody, this is huge for everybody. And the way that I kind of see it is, especially like this first half, like the first few months. I mean, going into March, the eclipses in March. I feel like everybody, you don't have to have anything in Pisces in your natal chart. You're still receiving a pretty darn heavy dose of this Piscean influence, especially because this Neptune I think of the North Node, the transiting North Node, as like it's like a pump that whatever it's in, it's bringing more of that energy in. And if there's a celestial body next to it, it's bringing the energy of that influence as well. So it's like a super heavy dose, especially while Venus is there as well. Parts of me feel like it might be a good thing that Saturn's there because Saturn's like, we can't quite leave this reality yet. We gotta, there's got some responsibilities to take care of. So
Yeah, I feel like that for instance, this is a dual analogy for us because we're dealing with dual sign Pisces, and so old world Saturn could be functioning on I need to work hard and get lots done, for instance, mentality, because it's so ingrained in us, for instance. But we know that sometimes you can work less and work smart and get more from it too, and that can be really useful.
yeah,
And to practice reprogramming and getting that as a habitual function has been maybe an ongoing thing for years for many of us. Another way of looking at something which might be ingrained in old ways of doing things would be like, oh, we elect a leader, we trust a government to make our decisions and to rule us, if you will. However, what we might be learning is to lead ourselves and to allow other people to lead themselves and to respect their decisions, even if they're not like going along the same path as us. And so we are carrying those old dynamics in to a new world to see with this first ingress, to see how we can then think, oh yeah, they definitely don't work. If we were because like some of the old trails, the old mannerisms of doing things will be like fingerprints on our new constructions, on our new initiations. However, because the actual conjunction doesn't happen until next year. When they regress back into Pisces, I feel that then we get to desemble. We're like, well, at least we started. At least we began. Somehow you got to begin. And often if you don't get started, then you don't get to make mistakes to be corrected to move forward entirely with. And so that's what makes it so exciting. Because I would say that if, for instance, one of the things that I would be more excited about would be an alternative educational system where we have art, music, yoga, nutrition, astrology, of course.
mhm,
And yet, no matter what, if we got the best of the best to into a school to teach that, the most brilliant examples of how that can be taught, there's a degree of naivety because we've never had that to done before. And that's the beauty of Aries is that it's the first thing, it's the crowning moment. And so I feel that anything that this year takes place is an opportunity to then wipe the slate clean as we actually properly move forward into 2026.
yeah,
That's a big picture example of what I think is going on. So I'd love to hear your reflection on that.
Yeah, no, you're saying things that I hadn't quite thought of, and so yeah, I'm glad you said that. And yeah, so it's the first ingress into Aries. They get really really close, but they don't make the exact conjunction, right? And then they retrograde back into Pisces, and I feel like I'm kind of this is a little bit maybe maybe a Pisces delusional optimistic thought, but I'm actually kind of hoping that this, maybe not immediately, but over these next couple years, potentially Saturn being there and then also moving from Pisces into Aries, like Pisces is last sign of the zodiac into Aries, revved up, ready to go, ready to make the changes, potentially could have an influence on. There's a massive like fentanyl epidemic or just overall opioid epidemic. I mean, really throughout the entire world. It's so tragic. And I know I personally know people who I've seen them like destroy their lives on this stuff. And I'm kind of hoping that that is something that this will play into bringing an end to that, something that, and even when you're talking about other options for education, I do think that's going to come into fruition. I mean, it's already starting to. We're already seeing it, but I think it's going to gain more traction. And the potential of even that, you know,
I
like,
think it can happen in a couple of ways. I feel that obviously the infrastructure and traditional system is a bit gasping for change because it's been the same for the past 100 years and it wasn't really that great then.
mm,
Um, Not only that, so there's that being a mole in the system, and then there's the alternative on the side. And I think there's a place for both. And people can even operate in both. And that can be for medical, that can be for education, that can be from all kinds of different things. So I think that's cool. But there's a lot of this self authority, well, the best I think Saturn would be self authority, to be able and to lead oneself, to authorize oneself, right? Without having to be like needing to work underneath someone else's umbrella, but to obviously collaborate with other people where we can uh, create together and stuff like that. But it's like martyrdom as well. Like, so we're following this leader, or an individual's doing it for that leader, with like the ideal of Neptune next to Saturn in Aries. It's like, I'll go and do it because I think this cause is worthy because that person said so. Is this kind of energy. But at the same time, that's a low vibrational state of it. A high vibrational state is like, I'm leading myself, I'm connected into myself, and I'm choosing to do this rather than what 95% of people might be doing that way.
yeah, totally. And what then you,
Collective, again, Neptune collective, and then there's the one. Excuse me. I just
and not only that, but that would actually also kind of make sense or resonate with the Pluto and Uranus going to be trining each other kind of at the same time all this is happening in their news, their air signs. And so, yeah, that definitely makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. And that was pretty predictive there. Bravo.
well, like I see like it's just the Uranus Pluto. That is so interesting. And also Pluto's going to sextile although it's Pluto's getting on now, isn't it? It's coming on to 4 degrees when it retrogrades this year.
Right.
Uh, so beautiful. Uh, I like that. I mean, I don't mean to change the record, but that Mars retrograde comes out of shadow the day that Pluto stations retrograde, which is it says a lot symbolically. It's like we did the work and now we can't go further with our roots, if you will, with our darkness. It's got to go back. We've got stuff to seek out that we've not got into the nitty gritty of. So that's May 4th as well.
Holy smokes. Yeah.
But the brilliant thing is, so what I see now we're moving into the smaller cogs with Mars and Venus,
Mhm.
because there's so many fathomable options to consider in stories and projections with Saturn and Neptune and what's going to go on with the North Node and all of this. But often when we use uh,
Oh, you're back.
oh, excuse me, yeah. So Mars has been retrograde for since December, and it's in a space now it was back in October. And so it's going to be retrograde to the 23rd of February. And
Okay.
yet then it will move forward, or first it will trudge because Mars, it doesn't like to go so slow as it's moving a little bit slow at first. But it's really powerful medicine because Mars has got Chiron in its sign and it's going to square Chiron for a third time. All of this stuff is healing a lot of wounds that were the first wounds that we picked up when we were born into our family circuits and all this type of stuff, and how that replays and how we get to be the change in that story. So that's really powerful, especially when we're talking about how that spills out into the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
But that's a process we're working with. On the other side of things, we've got this Venus, as you have mentioned, and it's just moving away from Saturn, but it's going to have two more conjunctions with Saturn.
It's just good to see the dance.
And
Yeah.
so that's very powerful. And yet Venus is going to go on in the next few days and meet with Neptune and then the North Node and go into Aries, but be slowing down because it's going to station retrograde.
Yep.
So the cool thing is Venus, of course, comes back and will make conjunctions for a second time of all these
Yep.
planets, and then move forward in a third. We're talking about April now.
Yep.
And so the end of April, Mars and Venus, they're kind of culminating their shadow periods at the same time. They leave shadow at the same time and then they trine each other. And so for me, that message from all of that is like that's as we're dealing with the ingresses of Neptune and Saturn into Aries. So I feel like there's this powerful initiation and the retrogrades help us to move forward. We can't get this new beginning until we've got the like the closure and the recognition that we're good enough to have what we want in this life. We don't have to have all the evidence of how it's going to happen today or tomorrow. We have got everything we need for today and potentially even tomorrow. And so we don't have to worry about the end of the week, next month, or what's going to happen when this year. We might have aspirations and excitements for tomorrow, the end of the week, next month, and the end of the year. But that can just bubble within us because we can trust,
Yeah.
and that's within ourselves, and that's the practice for Pisces. Sometimes I feel like, as you're a Pisces, my mum's Pisces, I've got a little bit of Pisces energy, but it's about trusting for the things that feel really far off of Saturn, maybe heavy or distant because they seem so far away, but
Yeah.
yet they're going to be real close real soon. So
That's
I
yeah.
feel like we can be patient and see how it turns out for us.
Yeah, really well said. And I'm also glad that you brought up the Chiron point as well, because I've been paying attention to Chiron in people's charts, especially this year, because of or last year, I should say, the total solar eclipse that was exactly conjunct Chiron. Like that was a whole mess of Chiron energy coming in. He's lit, he's activated. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said about that.
Yeah, do you feel like that was like an acupunctural kind of astrological moment for us because it hit the nail on the head? These all these Aries analogies for what was really most painful a wound for us to have to face, but
Mhm.
actually overcome. And I feel that's for everybody in some way, shape, or form, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, wow. And I'm not going to say it out loud, but I just really, I'm imagining your chart and how this came in. So I don't know if you necessarily want to go public with your chart, but
Well, I become a dad last summer, and he's 6 months old now, and I had Chiron retrograde opposite my moon, which is like family and stuff. And having not met my biological father, this is a very transcendental healing experience.
yeah, I knew that was going to be for you. I just knew it. I knew as soon as I knew what was going on, I was like, this is going to change Philip. Every ounce of you, every cell in your body is just, you
What,
don't love like that until you experience it, huh?
what was crazy, it was only a few months ago in October or something. I got my mum dug out my dad's birthday, and I didn't even know what his sign was.
Oh my gosh.
So I got to look at his chart and stuff. But what I found out was that he had me on his Chiron return. So we got the same degree Chiron. I know. That's big medicine, isn't it? Even not ever knowing him and stuff.
And was the birth time on, so you got his birth time as well?
No, I haven't got a birth time, but still.
Yeah, that's wow. Woo, got goosebumps. My goodness.
Yeah, you could see other things as well, like his Mars trying to my mum's Pluto and things like that. You could see things.
I bet. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't get my mom's, I mean, I knew her birth date time, I mean, her birthday and year, but I didn't know what time she was born until after she had passed away. And being able to look at all this stuff was just a lot of healing, a lot of hurt, but also a lot of healing as well. So yeah, I can relate with that on a different level. But that's so cool. I'm happy for you, Philip. I know you got to
Thank you.
wrap things up here soon.
Yeah, I mean, like, I could talk to you for an eternity, no doubt, on these subjects, and we will maybe we can come back once we're in the new season and see how things are shifting along, and we can talk about how we're working with those energies because I really enjoy sharing with you.
Totally. I'm super game. Anytime you want to connect, I'm super game to connect with you. I think you're one of the most interesting people. And I say this all the time. It's like I can't some astrologers that are just they're massive. I mean, using the word famous loosely here, but I they're almost boring to me. I'm not going to say any names, but some of them I'm like, what the hell? And then like you're flowing stuff out that's so deep and so passionate. And I know it's like this is every part of you is astrology. One time I heard you say you had astrology coming out of your eyeballs, and I was like, he literally does.
Well, I feel that likewise, this is that you embody it, you live it, and this is your passion, you're consistent, you're a source of what I consider pure wisdom and reliability. I'm really grateful for you as a comrade.
Likewise, Philip. Okay, well, let's wrap this up, and we will we'll come back again.
Yeah, you guys, this is going out on both our channels. So if you're new to Erin and you do subscribe, likewise, thank you for subscribing to my channel too, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Yes. Okay.